Alright, this is document number 8 for the AP World DBQ. Okay, so to start us off, let's look at the source of this document. The author of this document, whose name is Charles D. F. Knott, appears to be an English scholar. But what kind of scholar exactly? As we continue looking through the source, we can see regarding the debate on a bill in Parliament to restrict Indian textiles. This could tell us that this English scholar could possibly be an economic scholar or have some knowledge that we can rely on in accordance to this sort of subject. Alright, so let's start to look at the main part of this essay. As it starts out, it says that since we were supplemented in the spice trade by the Dutch. Now, this word supplemented means to take over or sort of have control of. So what they're saying is the Dutch have taken control of the spice trade, which was essentially under the control of the English before it was taken over control of by the Dutch. So this sort of left England without any form of trade, and their chief investments or their importations were from the East Indies, which would have been items such as dyed cotton cloth, silks, drugs, cotton yarn, and wool, which under normal circumstances would have only have been commodities that were used by English people only. But England also saw a chance to make some money out of this as well, since they were sort of kicked out of the spice trade. And it states that in times of peace, these goods were brought to London, and in London, they were sold to other European countries such as France, Germany, the Netherlands, Spain, Italy, and sometimes even their own colonies. This opened up a whole new world for the English and their trade, because now they were able to trade these super rare goods that weren't available anywhere else except that they had them and nobody else did. This allowed them to open up new trade routes to other European countries and essentially put them back on the map of trading goods. Now, on the next part of the essay, it says that Europe draws from Asia nothing of solid use. This is sort of saying that they aren't acquiring any commodities from Asia that are really of any real use to people. They're really only luxury goods that are being supplied to them. And these luxury goods, although provided some comfort to people, didn't really provide anything else besides comfort. And other than that, there was also perishable commodities. But they would send gold and silver to Asia in order to buy these things. But then it states, which is there buried and never returns. This could be talking about the Chinese silver tax, which was the tax that China had implemented for all of their bills and taxes would have been paid in silver. And because China didn't really need goods from anywhere else, because they were able to pretty much produce all their own goods within their own borders, all of this silver sort of stockpiled and was never really released back into the world. In this next part of this essay, it says that since Europe has tasted of this luxury, since the custom of 100 years has made Asian spices seem necessary to all degrees of people. What this is saying is that because they have gotten so used to having these Asian spices that they really couldn't live without them. And that all of these other Asian goods were, pleasing everywhere and were liked everywhere that they were seen, and they were accepted everywhere as well. It even states that the dyed cotton cloth is useful to wear at home and in our own colonies. And it also states that it's useful for the Spaniards in America. Now, what this would have done would have been to open up a new trade route to the newly discovered Americas, which now England has expanded their trade routes to just from around the European countries to now all the way over to the newly discovered Americas, creating a whole new world of opportunities for them to be able to create trade with other countries. It then states that this can never be advisable for England to quit this trade. What it's saying is that if England ever gave up this spot, which they have come into ownership of, the spot of trade and their power, is if they left this spot of power, that some other nation would come up and try and take that spot, because that nation would know that because these other countries are willing to pay lots of money for these goods, that they would think, oh, this seems like a good opportunity, and they would be the ones to supply these goods to all these other nations. So it would be a bad idea for England to leave it to any other nation in regards to this trade route. Alright, let's talk about some tones. I think one of the main tones that was shown in this would have been warning. I think this because the author seems to be warning the Parliament that if they gave up this trade route, or this trade routes, I should say, that they would lose a lot of opportunities to gain more wealth than what they already had. And in doing so, would lose a lot of their power. I also think the second most important thing would have had to be pushing. I think that because this author also seems to be wanting to push the Parliament in order to sort of expand and create even more opportunities than what they already have right now. And with this expansion of trade, they would be able to come into a power of even more money and more strength in the sort of global economy that was starting to form up during this time. Now let's talk about purpose. I believe that the purpose of this article was that this trade was, with the Indian textiles, was positive, or had a positive impact on European trade. And that it would be a really bad idea if they stopped, because they would lose a lot of the wealth that they had accumulated because of it. Next thing to talk about is the audience. I believe that this author sort of centered this essay to the audience of the English Parliament. I think that because the article is the source is actually directly addressed to a debate on a bill that was currently in Parliament as to the restriction of the Indian textiles. So I believe that he was centering this article to show the more positive looks on this trade, and that they shouldn't restrict these Indian textiles and should expand more. The audience, I think, also goes well with, I believe to be his point of view, which would be that he believes that England would better prosper and gain more wealth and power if they kept this trade route open and expanded it. And this would sort of also show that his point on this matter of subject, that he believes that they shouldn't restrict the Indian textiles and should that it's because of these Indian textiles that they were able to expand as far as they had, and that they wouldn't have been able to expand as far as they had if it hadn't been for these Indian textiles. Again, this has been an overview on document number 8 for AP World DBQ.